So let me just sort of encapsulate why we are here today. National Law Center for Children and Families cares about keeping children safe. You heard Larry give you a preview. You've heard from my boss, Summer Steffen. We have a catastrophe in San Diego County, just like every other big county, especially convention cities, suffer from a high demand. That is one of the reasons that human trafficking continues to be a problem here in San Diego County. I wish we could tell you we knew how to magically reduce the demand. But Larry mentioned my book. One of the things that I talk about in the book is how to spot victims and how to spot perpetrators. FLAG, I'm going to give you an acronym to remember. And part of the reason that's necessary is it's true, I've done 160 trials, so you don't need to do the math to know how old I am, but let's just say I've been at this for a couple of decades. Yeah, right, I started when I was 10, right? Remember that when you do the math. So when you take 20 plus years of experience, the book is not only that, but it's backed up with all sorts of psychological research that corroborates how our young men and young women fall for manipulators. They're traffickers, they're people that are going to steal their money, sometimes they're bad dates, all around the spectrum. All of us are susceptible to this. So what does FLAG stand for? I'm going to try to really hone it down and make it relevant to the topic of today. F stands for focus, not yours, the other person's. If I were speaking to a bunch of 13-year-old girls, no, let's make them 17-year-old girls getting ready to go on their first date, right? I would say if you go on a first date with a man, does he focus on your body, your brain, or the ball game? If I was giving this presentation to a group of philanthropists and like-minded political activists, I would say the same kind of thing. Is somebody's intentions malevolent or benevolent? And how do you know that? What do they pay attention to? I'll give you a terrible example that unfortunately is very practical in San Diego County. We have a lot of shopping malls. My sister, also a big-time activist against human trafficking, she and I could sit in a food court and spot who we think, at least is acting like a human trafficker. How do you tell? Unlike some of the same-aged boys that pedaled there on their bicycle and they're with their Letterman's jacket, you find guys standing in a food court all day long, dressed like they're getting ready to go out to the club. They're not eyeing the selection of pizza, they're eyeing the selection of prey. Now, I know this as a practical fashion because, as Larry said, I've prosecuted human trafficking cases, pimping and pandering cases, and I know how these girls get picked up, and more often than not, in a lot of cases, it is a place like a shopping mall. I call these traffickers shopping mall sharks. They circle around where they know these young girls are going to be congregating, but focus is a way we can tell what a bad person is looking at. I could talk about terrorists, not the topic for today, but it makes my point. If you watch the footage back of the Boston Marathon bombers, those two bombers weren't watching the race. They were watching the backpack, and they knew where the bomb was. Same thing with all of these airport bombing incidents. If you look at where the bad guy is focused, you learn a lot about intentions. The L stands for lifestyle. We all know what each other do for a living. We spend time with somebody in the workplace, but you don't really know what you need to know about somebody unless you know what they do when they're off the clock. I often call this red flags after 5 because I've prosecuted plenty of cases where somebody holds a white-collar job during the day, rolls into work in a high-end Lexus, has his own cappuccino maker, his or her, because it's both the men and the women, and then it's what they do at 5 o'clock that gives us some insight as to what they're really interested in. Do they head off to the gym? Do they go to a Bible study? Do they go to the bar? Do they, as in one trafficking case I prosecuted, go to another apartment that they own for purposes of prostitution? Where do they go? And if you don't know the answer to that, you don't know as much as you need to know to really get a good read on another person. The A stands for associations. You know, we all used to say that great phrase as we were growing up, show me your son's friends and I'll show you his future. Remember that? There's another good one too where they say each of us, we're the average of our 3 closest friends. There's so many ways to say it, yet sometimes we fail to take into account the kind of peer groups that people we know have. I've spent years prosecuting sexual offenders, and one of the things that we always notice is that their peer group identification is decades younger. Case in point, I prosecuted cases where school teachers, female school teachers, are having sex with their 12-year-old boy students. And one of the cases that I always remember, big red flag, the 30-something-year-old teacher, her best friend, her best girlfriend, was how old do you suppose? 16, okay, close. Now there's something very wrong with that. If we look online, as we often do to get a lot of our red flags, if somebody's got a peer group, whether it's people that espouse violence or rape or sexual assault, or people that are 50 years old and they're in a chat room trading baseball cards with 12-year-old boys, associations is a huge red flag if we know what to look for. The G in flag stands for goals. The goals, and I'll give you another great scripture, it's the, show me the fruit, right? It's the fruit that tells what kind of a good tree, whether they're a good tree or a bad tree. It's what we produce. Knowing what somebody's goals are tell you far more about them than looking and listening. Now this is important when it comes to trafficking cases, because traffickers don't look like scary guys like the movies project them. We've all seen Taken, and sadly in this day and age that kind of thing does happen. But that's not what we see most of the time. What we see most of the time is cultivating relationships of trust, often trust and power differential, and that is the method by which traffickers are able to lure their victims. Those that have abandoned the trade, praise God, have said it was honey, not vinegar. It was promising love and affection and attention and all the rest of that. That's the way they get the victims. So given that framework, FLAG, how am I doing on time? Do I have 5 more minutes? Okay. So the next part of the book it's 10 chapters, and it's the 10 reasons that bad people can look good. Now here's my caveat. It's also the 10 reasons good people look good. What bad people have done, like the traffickers and predators in our society, is they have perverted the interpersonal ways in which we genuinely and authentically show that other people are important to us. And I think it's just brilliant that Larry quoted Dale Carnegie, How to Win Friends and Influence People. Boy, if you haven't read that, you can read it in an afternoon, it'll change your life. But actually internalizing, what is it that draws us to other people? Well, the bad people know this as well. I'm just going to give you a couple of them kind of as a teaser. The first one is attractive. Many traffickers benefit from this. They show up in court in a 3-piece suit. They're almost indistinguishable from the defense attorney. The jurors come in, they go, they sit down in the box, they look over, and they can't tell who's the defendant and who's the lawyer. They both look so good. Same thing with the ladies. I can't tell you how many trials I've been so excited. There's all this great information coming out of the witness stand, and I look over at the jurors. Hopefully they're just listening to everything that the witness is saying, and what are they looking at? They're looking at the pretty lady at the defendant's table, not paying a bit of attention. It is disarming the way some of this charm is able to work. The halo effect is what we call it. You get somebody who's accused of doing something bad, but they look good, sound good, have a nice resume, have a great job. We tend to ascribe to them all these positive qualities they don't have. Give you another one of the bad reasons that bad people can look good. Attention, especially selective attention. What these traffickers do in the shopping mall food court is they don't target the head cheerleader, the blonde, blue-eyed prom queen. Attention to somebody like that wouldn't really be that big of a deal. They target women that aren't used to getting any. Right. And I'll tell you how far they get with that. It is incredible. Some of the victims that we meet in our cases come in, and it's amazing that this even occurred to begin with. The victims will come in and say, this is the first man that ever gave me any attention. I've never been whistled at in a shopping mall, because traffickers and predators know those are the easy targets, because what they do is they prey on areas of vulnerability. And I also want to say, in terms of reading the red flags, that is another reason that nobody is necessarily immune. I've had victims that have come in, they've been in college, they've had jobs, they've walked in business, and you think, wait a minute, right, this must be somebody else. You must be going to the economic crimes floor. That's on a different floor. This is sex crimes. Now, all predators have to do is discover our areas of vulnerability. Maybe we don't think we're smart enough, or maybe we feel bad because we've gone through a divorce, or we think we're a bad parent or grandparent. We have some kind of physical infirmity that we're self-conscious about. If a predator and a bad person or a manipulator finds out those areas of vulnerability, that's where they strike, and that's where they can make us feel good about ourselves in a fashion that we've opened ourselves up to manipulation. That is why victims of trafficking, victims of child predators, victims of adult predators are not necessarily only the weak and only the vulnerable. If the PowerPoint was working, I'd show you one of those great photos from the Animal Planet where they show the slowest wildebeest getting attacked. That's not it. Anybody is vulnerable once somebody bad learns our areas of vulnerability. And I'll end with, I guess, just one more. Hopefully, I'll sort of try to end it on a high note. People change, and knowledge is power. Knowledge is power, and that equipping our young people with the tools they need to understand that they need to do more than look and listen before they put their trust in another person is one of the best lessons we can teach nowadays in a world of social media where our teenagers are committing suicide because of things that are being posted about them online, because they have opened themselves up to somebody that they trusted because somebody was able to find their area of vulnerability. I've had jury trials where females in the jury box have fallen in love with the defendant, making eyes at each other the whole trial that I didn't know about until after the whole thing was over. It is so easy to learn somebody's area of vulnerability. So remember, focus, lifestyle, association, goals, and be aware of the ways in which bad people can look good in order to protect ourselves, our loved ones, each other, and our community.